Today I want to talk a little bit about silence. Silence, I believe, is possibly one of the most core exercises that is important for not just spirituality, but also I feel like for the fundamental experience of being human. If we're not able to actually be silent with and inside ourselves, I feel like there's a lack of really being able to understand ourselves and the world, and fundamentally to connect with the divine, with God, with our own experience of spirituality. So today I just want to talk a little bit about silence, and then also lead into an experience of silence and give you some exercises that maybe you can do on your own. Silence is not just a lack of sound. It's actually a quality of experience. And I really think that it's really more than a noun. I feel like it's actually a verb. That to engage in silence is both simultaneously active and passive. And what I mean by that is that it really takes effort to engage in the process of silence. And technically it looks like nothing is actually going on when you're in silence, but it's actually more of a quality of experience and an active presence. To quiet not just our surroundings, but also our minds can take rigorous work and ongoing exercise and practice. So none of us are actually good at silence initially. It's really kind of like working out in the gym. The first time you go, if you haven't been in a long time or you haven't been exercising and you go for the first time, it's hard, it's awkward, and sometimes you really just don't want to do it. But if you do it, afterward, you feel good about it. And as you continue to do the practice, those exercises get better and better and richer in quality. And I think silence is much the same, where initially there's this fidgety awkwardness about even beginning to engage in the process of silence. But if you're able to just push through that initial uncomfortability, then there is still some hard work in that, but then you're able to actually move into this space of, I don't know, what I really think is kind of like what runners experience when they exercise, of that runner's high. I actually feel like as I've continued to engage in the practice of silence, I've gotten used to that rhythm of that awkward entering in and then moving through the hard part of quieting my mind. And then you enter this space of just a great creativity and quality to that silence. I feel like silence is often thought of as that place of void, but I do want to challenge that idea. I think silence is really like the fertile soil in the winter. It looks like nothing at all is going on and everything is dead, but really this is the time when the roots for trees grow the most in the winter. You actually see nothing happening and the tree looks dead, but there are roots. The most growth for a tree happens in the winter when those roots grow underneath the ground. And I really think that silence is that type of space where it looks like nothing is happening at all, but really there's this rich, deep, underground growth and creativity happening. So I think silence is a space that is for real, genuine, internal, and creative growth. And so I hesitate to make this parallel thought in your mind, because I do feel like there's something about engaging in silence that is just for engaging in the silence. But in our world of productivity and those sorts of ideas, I do feel like it's worth mentioning that I think the quality of productivity in silence is actually wholly other, that there is actually something happening. I think sometimes people think they can't take the space to engage in silence because they have so much to do. And I do want to say that I feel like the opposite is true, that if you engage in silence, then you actually become your most productive. And again, I hesitate to make those connections because I don't think you engage in silence to be productive. But I do think that there is a huge productive quality to actually coming to a place of silence, because it's in that space of silence that your soul opens, that your soul is actually able to breathe. I think we have so much coming at us all the time, and there's just this frantic quality to our lives these days, and just creating small spaces of silence creates that space for our soul to actually breathe life. Just like our bodies need breath to live, our soul needs breath to survive. And I think that's why many of us in this space of chaotic, frantic lifestyle that we're living feel like our soul is dying, because we're actually not even creating space for it to breathe. And so I think that this silence is a space where you can not only create a place of breath for your soul, but where you can actually meet yourself, like engage in your own understanding of what's going on inside you. And it's a place where you can experience the divine. I think that interaction of both your own soul and the divine in that space of silence is where you are able to co-create the roots and the foundations of your life, of your soul, and even of your work in this world. Because I think it's in that silence that you are able to kind of have that spark. It's kind of like oxygen for a fire, that you are coming together with your own soul and giving your own soul space, while also coming together with God and the divine in order to actually have that co-creative, engaging relationship. And so for me, often, most of my most alive times or creative times do come out of that space where I have sat through the uncomfortability long enough to actually quiet my mind. And so now I just want to talk a little bit about the practice of that. Whenever you take some space to get silent, you don't actually have to have a whole lot of time in order to get silent, but I do think as you get used to being silent, the longer and longer periods of time that you can take in silence, the greater the depth of that experience will be. But starting out, I think most of us just need to start out with a minute of silence. And often we think that we don't have a minute in our day, but as I talk about with lots of my clients, that can be sitting in the car before you pick up your kids from an activity or from school. It can be sitting in your car before or after work. It can be intentionally taking a moment before you come out of the bathroom and just sitting there and actually putting a timer on and having 1 minute of silence. And so often when you begin the practice of engaging in silence, once you start, there's this flood of thoughts that come through your mind about completely random things, because these are things that have been in your body already and in your mind already, that because of your level of attention and activity to other things haven't actually been able to come up. There hasn't been a space for those. And so it's a very natural thing whenever you start your practice of silence that you may be bombarded with other thoughts, like just completely random thoughts, like, oh, I forgot to buy dog food, or oh, I didn't put this in my kid's lunch, or oh, I need to do this tomorrow. So the way you deal with that, there's a couple different ways of dealing with that. One is you can just sit through it. All those things will start coming up in your mind, and that's okay. You weren't thinking about them before, and now you are, which is fine, and just allow them to pass. The image I like to use for this, I got out of a spiritual direction book that I read at some point. I can't remember the name of it, but basically it was an illustration where you just imagine that you're sitting on the front porch, and you're sitting on the front porch and watching your thoughts just walk by, right? So it's like, oh, yep, there's that thought. I'm just going to let it walk by. I acknowledge that it's there, and I'm going to let it pass. So that's one way of dealing with those thoughts that come up. It's like, yep, that came up. Okay, I'm going to let it pass. Another practice that you can do if you really struggle with just allowing those thoughts to pass in those moments is just having a piece of paper. And I really suggest it being a tangible piece of paper and pen instead of a notes-taking app on a device, because once you open a device, all of a sudden your attention is pulled in numerous different directions. And so I really do suggest just having a piece of paper and a pen that you can just jot down that note as it comes to you. If it's something that you can't just let pass by. If you can let something pass by, let it pass. If not, and it's too distracting, just jot it down so that you can let it go. So that's what happens initially, is you sit down, you take that time in silence, and then all those thoughts come through, and you just sit through that. And at first, whenever you begin a practice of silence, that may be all you do in 1 minute, and that's okay. Again, this is not a place to be productive. I think productive things come out of it eventually, but learning the practice doesn't always begin with a deep level of experience and engagement and productivity. And so in that first minute, sometimes as you begin the practice, that may be all you do, but that is huge, because to some degree, all those things and thoughts and feelings in your body that come up in that 1 minute have just been sitting there waiting for you to pay attention. And that in and of itself is a valuable exercise, because most of the time we don't even take the time to pay attention to our own thoughts and feelings, because we, especially as women, are consistently wired to and expected to culturally take care of everyone else's needs before our own. And so if all you do in that 1 minute is just pay attention to your own thoughts, I don't know how many times as a mom I have even said, wow, I had some time to think my own thoughts, right? And so that is a super valuable time. And as you continue the practice, those thoughts will actually get less and less. If you're able to do this on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you'll start to see that those thoughts, you get better at handling them, and you've taken space to actually think them, and so they will actually become less and less. So that's the first part. And then as you are able to allow all those thoughts to pass, then to just sit and be. The process of just being present and allowing your mind to quiet, being present to your body, and potentially being present to God in that space. Again, it's not a time to try to do anything or fix anything or figure anything out. It's just a space to become silent. And I think it's in that silence that we we are really able to fundamentally know ourselves more and know God and the divine more. So one of the things today is I just want us to have a practice of that. Often with many of my clients, I've noticed that if I give them this exercise to do on their own, even if it's just a minute of silence, most of them come back the next week and haven't done it because it is terrifying to actually think about sitting in silence these days, right? Like there's just so much distraction happening and there's so many things to do, and it's actually scary, I think, to many people to think about stopping long enough to think and feel their own thoughts, because there's so much backlog of things that have not been processed. But one of the things I like to say is just starting with a minute, and with 1 minute, then you can stop that and start something else, right? If that was difficult for you, then you just move on to the next thing after 1 minute. So a lot of the times I will do this actually with clients so that they get an experience of doing that in session with another person with them. So that's what I just want to offer you today, is a space of doing this with you. And I would like for you now, I will actually time this. So it's been pretty fascinating when I've done this with clients that I do actually time it just so that you can have 1 minute experience and know that it's doable. So we're just going to do that now. I just invite you to get in a space that you feel comfortable. That could be in your car. It could be in your favorite chair. It could be, if you have kids, just taking a moment in the bathroom with the door locked. They'll be okay for 1 minute. So just get in a comfortable space, and I'm just going to invite you to take 3 deep breaths initially. I'm going to give you a breath count to do those breaths. We're going to do 6 in and 6 out, and we're going to do that 3 times. And then I will time 1 minute of being in silence. So let's just begin that. Feet on the ground. And if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes or keep a steady gaze down low. And we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'd just like for you to take 1 minute in silence, and at the close of that minute, I will pray. God, we thank you for this time and space of 1 minute to just be silent and present, to just be. May you continue to give us spaces that allow us to just be who you've created us to be. And now take a deep breath. And begin to open your eyes. And that was 1 minute of silence. And so I invite you to, again, if you can, do this on your own by setting in just a timer on your phone. Set a gentle timer so that you know when 1 minute is up. And as you begin to practice this, start at 1 minute, increase to 3 minutes, then increase to 5 minutes. And you will definitely notice a change in how you're able to not only engage your day, but also to just have an awareness of yourself and God, and to have a quality of change in who you are and how you're approaching life. So I hope this has been helpful. May God be with you as you go about your day.